Hi, everybody. This is Cynthia Kane, and I'd like to welcome you back to UL100ZB Research Skills, Information, and Technology for this week's module of Copyright and Ethical Use of Information. So the first thing we're going to do is look at some copyright basics. We have a link here for you to take a look at if you would be interested in, and it's from the Copyright Clearance Center. There's a very nice definition here of what copyright actually is in terms of intellectual property and legal protection that's given to content creators through the assignment of specific rights to works that qualify for protection. Essentially, copyright is basically economic as well as protecting the author's work. So in this week's module, we're going to be looking at copyright and ethical use of information as you might have applied it to different classes. And what we want you to do is think about these particular situations. Why are your professors, for example, so insistent on you giving proper credit to authors in your research papers, whether you're doing direct quotes or if you're paraphrasing? Well, it really does have to do with copyright and intellectual property. One of the big reasons for copyright is that we do not want to steal other people's ideas. And when you're doing that, if you're not giving proper credit to an author in a paper or other project, essentially it is stealing somebody else's ideas. That's really what it does come down to. You may not know this, but any work that you have indeed created up until this point does have a copyright. It's yours. You don't have to register it. You really don't have to do anything else. That means that if you wrote a research paper, and if another student actually quoted from the research paper that you wrote, they have to give you credit. Essentially, they have to cite you in their paper. And of course, the same goes for you. If you are taking ideas from a book, an article, a website, a podcast, a video, any other form of communication, you must give that original author credit, again, whether it is a direct quote or paraphrasing. And as I mentioned, you don't actually have to register a copyright. What that means, too, is if I decided that one of you in our class did a wonderful job on your web portfolio as your final project, and I wanted to use your web portfolio as an example for other students in other UL100 classes that I would teach, I'd have to come to you first. I can't actually use your portfolio without you giving me permission. And I have indeed done that with other students in the past. So that's kind of an interesting way of thinking about copyright, as it might apply to yourself and your own creative work. Our textbook is actually something called open access, and this is something that probably you're going to hear more and more about as you go through your college career. We already know how incredibly expensive other textbooks for classes can be. It can almost get a little bit out of control. When we made the decision to use our textbook, the Information Literacy User's Guide for UL100, we liked it because it had a lot of the content that we like to use. We thought it was a very good example of the concepts that we wanted to teach in our class. However, we also liked it because it was free. We could provide that link to you all and say, if you would like to download that textbook as a PDF, you're more than welcome to do that. That's called open access. So open access simply means free, unrestricted access to peer-reviewed scholarly research. This is something, again, that you will probably start hearing about a lot more. We do have on our webpage something called the Directory of Open Access Journals. So if you were to go to that, you could actually find freely available scholarly journals and do some searching in them to find articles on different topics. The difference between that and the library databases that we've been having you use as well is that the library is actually paying for the databases that we provide through our databases page. What that means is that we've actually done the copyright clearances for you. That's why when you use a database, you are able through the library as a currently enrolled ESU student to access the full text and PDF of so many different articles. Is because we've already paid the copyright for you. Again, maybe a little bit of a different way of thinking about copyright that you've not had a chance to do until now. Now, you may have professors in your classes who are perhaps might scan articles or perhaps book chapters in PDF, and they may make them available for you to read on Canvas in your Canvas courses. They can do that because it actually falls under another copyright idea that's called fair use. And fair use is a way of avoiding some copyright violations. It's a legal doctrine, and it permits the unlicensed use of copyright protected works in certain cases. So, for example, let's say that I had a reading that I wanted you to look at on our Canvas course. I could probably be okay with scanning a chapter from the book and say, go ahead and read this, or scanning the PDF of an article if it didn't happen to be available any other way, because it fits the purpose of the character, the nature, the amount, and the effect. So if I scanned an article or a book chapter for you, I'm not trying to make a profit. I'm not charging you extra to, get access for it. So I'm not trying to make a profit. Again, I'm providing that for educational purposes. It would be more factual, so I'm not really trying to steal somebody's creative work. The amount of the work, I'm not scanning an entire book and making that readily available on Canvas. That would indeed violate fair use, and it would violate copyright, because I'd be trying to get around the idea of paying for the textbook. So I really couldn't do that. But if I happen to scan one book chapter, it's not the entire work, so I could probably be okay with that. And finally, the effect of the use upon potential market or value of the work. Again, I'm not trying to put one over on the author. An author has to make a profit if they write a book or if they publish something else and people are actually buying it. Again, under fair use, if I'm not trying to make a profit or take profit away from an author, I'm probably okay to use that part of the work under fair use. Again, keep in mind, copyright is very much economic. It does have to do with the commodification of information and actually paying for information in a fair way. So in just a moment, I'm going to switch over to our module for this week, because I want to show you some links that we have provided for some videos that I'd like for you to listen to after you go through this tutorial. These actually have to do with music and fair use or plagiarism. So the first two examples are actually from a group called the Chiffons, who recorded a song called He's So Fine in the 1950s. And then one of the former members of the Beatles, George Harrison, who recorded a song called My Sweet Lord and released that in the early 1970s. My Sweet Lord sounds very, very similar to He's So Fine. Now, what happened in this particular situation is that George Harrison was actually sued by the publisher of the song He's So Fine, not by the Chiffons, but by the publisher of the song, for plagiarizing the tune. Harrison claimed that he didn't do that, or if he did, it was certainly unintentional. He wasn't trying to steal something intentionally. The result, and the court case actually dragged out until about the late 1970s, is that George Harrison was actually found guilty of unintentional plagiarism, and part of the royalties from the rights of the song, My Sweet Lord, have had to go back to the publisher of the song, He's So Fine. So that's where plagiarism can kind of catch you if you're not careful. These next three will also sound familiar. You might be very familiar with Anna Kendrick and a song called Cubs that appeared in the Pitch Perfect movie. This actually originated from an old song from the 1920s performed by the original Carter family, and that song was called Will You Miss Me When I'm Gone? This link here offers you a good history of the cups phenomenon, and you can take a look at that link later on if you're interested in that. But what I'm going to do right now is actually show you where these particular videos are located on our module. And I would very much encourage you to go in and go to this link, Songs, Similarities, and Comparisons. And this is where I've provided the links to these songs. Listen to them and see what you find in terms of any similarities. Now, in the example of cups, actually that was not really ruled as plagiarism. And the reason was that The original Carter family song, Will You Miss Me When I'm Gone, wasn't actually originally theirs. It was a folk song from the Appalachian Mountains that the Carter family took, sort of twisted it, sort of rewrote it, and then recorded it as Will You Miss Me When I'm Gone. And then over the decades, this song evolved in a lot of different ways to finally become Cups. So in this case, no one is saying that this was plagiarism or anything was stolen, as opposed to what happened with the Chiffons, He's So Fine, and George Harrison, My Sweet Lord. Again, I encourage you to go to these and actually listen to them and see what you think in terms of the similarities and comparisons of the songs and how that might fit in terms of copyright and plagiarism. So the next thing we're going to do is going to ask you to think about this particular question. So you may have noticed, particularly if any of you have Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime, that sometimes if we're watching films or TV shows on streaming video, that the actual music that's used in different scenes might be different from the time that you actually watched the film originally in the movie theater, or you may have seen the TV show originally on a network when it was first broadcast. This happens in a lot of different situations. Now, we know that music can evoke an emotional response, and so in many films and TV shows, particular songs are chosen quite deliberately in order to evoke that emotional response. However, this is what happens. Have you ever noticed that a song has been changed when you watch a TV show or a film again on streaming video or on DVD? The original music by the original artist may be stripped out. It may have been replaced by generic music, or in some cases, the scenes with original music are cut completely. We have an example in just a second that I'm going to show you. Why does that happen? Well, most often it has to do, again, with copyright and economic issues. You have to keep this in mind. The rights to pay the artists or the bands for use of the songs in commercial release are sometimes far too expensive to negotiate or renegotiate if something is going to be re-released on DVD or streaming video. And so as a result, the music might be replaced by generic music or another song, or again, the scene that contains the song in the film or the show might be absolutely cut out completely. So just kind of keep that in mind when you start watching things on streaming video. So one of our engagement activities for this week is going to ask you to think about this particular idea. Should the original music for a film or a television show be the primary focus of a commercial release on DVD or streaming video? Or is it more important to release the film or the TV series without the original music in order to get it to the audience as soon as possible? The reason we want you to think about this in your engagement activity, which I will show you in our next tutorial, is the idea that if I'm trying to get copyright clearances from bands or artists or different groups so that I can use the original music in a re-release, that could take years, that could take even decades. It could very much delay the release of a film or a TV show on streaming video or on DVD. So there's actually two schools of thought on this. One is not right and one is not wrong. We want you to think about this. And this is a very good example. So back in the 1990s, I was a big fan of the original show Beverly Hills 90210. And what was very pertinent about that particular show was that they used a lot of original songs from bands of the 1990s to highlight scenes and again to evoke emotional responses from their audience. It was a big, big thing in every show. Now, when you see any reruns of Beverly Hills 90210 on TV, for the most part, they will still use the original music in the different shows. There are some exceptions. There are some scenes in which the clearances from the bands were actually not able to be obtained for reruns. For the original airings, yes, but not for the reruns. And so in that case, the original music may have been replaced in reruns, or again, the scenes featuring the artist may have been totally cut out, so you actually can't get to them again. On the DVDs for Beverly Hills 90210, for the most part, the original music from these bands of the 1990s was replaced with generic music. This was a huge controversy a number of years ago when the DVDs came out for this show. Fans were up in arms. But again, it was a situation in which if the producers had gone back and tried to get clearances from those original artists to use the original music on the DVDs, it probably would have taken decades, and we probably still wouldn't have anything released for 90210. Again, copyright. What will happen often is that the original music rights that are negotiated to use songs on TV shows and films may not always include the rights for re-releases on DVD or streaming video or even for reruns on television. And again, negotiating those rights may involve millions of dollars. So then that means that the cost of a DVD might go up, or again, with streaming video, it may never actually be released on streaming video. By the way, if any of you are fans of Saturday Night Live, what you might notice is that if you go to the SNL site on NBC.com, and if you're looking for shows basically from the 1970s to the present, one thing you'll notice is that you can watch a lot of original sketches from those shows from Saturday Night Live over the different seasons, that you will never, ever see the musical performances on NBC.com. Why? Again, it has to do with negotiating the copyright and the rights to release that music from the artist, and that hasn't happened. So as a result, you're not going to see those particular musical performances officially from Saturday Night Live on NBC.com. Of course, there are a lot of unauthorized videos that are floating around on YouTube, but that does violate copyright. So this is another comparison I'm going to have you do. What I've done here, and I'm going to go back into our class. And we'll go back here. I have on this link for Beverly Hills 90210 original music and replacement music, two videos that I'd like for you to watch and compare on your own. So the first video is a scene between two of the 90210 characters, Brenda and Dylan. And there's a very famous song that's playing in the background as they're having a very serious discussion. It's REM's Losing My Religion. So with this one, this is the original music that appeared when this actually came out in the 1990s. This particular scene was a re-release that was shown in a rerun on CBS, but in this particular instance, REM didn't give the copyright clearances to use their song, so the song Losing My Religion has been replaced by a generic song in the second scene. I want you to watch both of these on your own, and I want you to think about any differences in what you're noticing and what you think about the scene. Does it affect the way you feel about the characters? Think about that, because again, this is going to relate to one of your engagement activities that you'll be doing for this week. So again, take some time to do that. We've reached the end of our video tutorial for copyright and ethical use of information. In our next video tutorial, I will be going over this week's engagement activities and learning assessments. And again, as we always say, if you have any questions about your engagement activities, learning assessments, contact Megan, contact me well ahead of schedule, and we're more than happy to help you with that. Good luck.